Hey, welcome to Amanda's Book Corner. I'm Amanda, and this is my review of The Chestnut Man by Søren Sveistrup. The Chestnut Man has been on my list for a couple of years, and I finally picked it up earlier this year. I just decided to wait until October to read it because I thought it'd be the perfect end of October read leading up to Halloween. The book takes place in Copenhagen, in Denmark, and it follows a series of gruesome murders that are happening around the city. And one thing that connects the murderers is a small little man made out of chestnuts that is left at each crime scene. I've seen a lot of places categorize The Chestnut Man as horror, but I wouldn't really call it horror specifically. It does get pretty gruesome and has some gory details of the murder victims, and that's mostly up front, by the way. If you're squeamish about gory things, it's only in the first several chapters, and then after that, there's not too much description of the details of the murders. But anyway, I wouldn't really call it a horror novel specifically. It plays more like a crime novel or like a police procedural. It primarily follows two detectives who are working the case and trying to figure out who the Chestnut Man is, who his next victim will be, how they can save the next victim from actually being murdered by this guy. And it follows them as they're searching for clues and interviewing people and trying to work out this very complicated mess of a case that they have. The main detective is a woman named Naya Tulin, and she's working with an outsider who's been shipped over from The Hague. His name is Mark Hess. Now, they're definitely at odds with their boss at the police department, in part because the two detectives, they see a connection between these murders and a previous case from a year prior when a young girl went missing. That case was closed, although the girl's body was never found, and their boss and other people that worked on that case, they don't want that case to be reopened. They're like, you know what, we solved it, it's done. These murders have nothing to do with that, despite the similarities and despite the missing girl's fingerprints on these chestnuts at the crime scene. So, it's definitely complicated. There's definitely some bureaucratic nonsense going on. And as the novel moves forward, you start to feel more and more frustrated, especially on the parts of these two detectives, because they're not being allowed to follow certain leads and uncover certain information that could be crucial to cracking this case. The Chestnut Man is a big novel. It's over 500 pages, and I will admit I was a little bit daunted going into it, but to its benefit, it actually is a very fast and compulsive read. It's divided into really short chapters. There's 130 chapters between 516 pages, so you do the math. It's about an average of 4 pages per chapter, which is pretty short. So it makes the book go by really quickly. And the pacing is great too. There's always new stuff going on. There's always new clues to follow and unfortunately new victims to follow up with. It just keeps you guessing and keeps your full attention the whole way through. In addition to having a high page length, it also has a huge cast of characters. Especially early on, it was a little bit hard for me to keep them all straight because there's just so many of them. You're introduced to the two main detectives, their boss, several people that they work with. You're introduced to the victims before they are murdered by this Chestnut Man. You're introduced to the two parents of the girl who went missing the year prior. There's a lot of characters to keep track of, and early on I kept having to remind myself of who each character was, but after the first few chapters I was able to keep them straight. The Chestnut Man isn't an overly complicated story in the long run. I do think that the way things play out makes sense, and I started to see some patterns emerging partway through the book. The only thing that I couldn't figure out was who the Chestnut Man actually was. When that was finally revealed towards the end, I was actually surprised. I don't know, I didn't see that coming. I didn't suspect that person at all. So I will give kudos to the author for that. It was definitely a surprise. Part of why it was such a surprise is just because there's so many different things going on. There's numerous victims, there's a lot of red herrings and clues that lead you down the wrong rabbit hole. With so much to juggle, it's hard to zero in on who the culprit is, which of course is by design, and not just by the author, but I think by the Chestnut Man himself. I think he definitely knew what he was doing in kind of keeping the circus of a crime investigation going. It finally culminates in a really big ending. I actually really enjoyed the ending. I feel like everything came full circle in a really cool way, and it was definitely propulsive and got your heart racing, but I like how it worked out, even if it took a lot of twists and turns to get there. In addition to the murders and the whole investigation of who this serial killer is, I also really liked other aspects of the book as well. I like how it dives into family dynamics and the kind of traumas within families and how hard it is to keep your family together when bad things are happening. In particular, I really like how it looks at Rosa and Steen Hartung, the parents of the missing girl, and how they're grappling with it a year later, believing that she's dead, but now thinking that maybe she's not dead, and how that affects them, how that affects their son, kind of the hope that they have, but also wanting to move on with this and stop feeling like they're being haunted by the past. I really felt for them. I also like the glimpses we get into Naya Thulene's relationships with her daughter and how hard it is for her as a single mother, and also how we get a small glimpse into Mark Hess's past and the people he lost before ending up in The Hague and then being now back in Denmark. By the time the book ends, it feels like there could definitely be more stories between Thulene and Hess, and actually I was really happy to read that the author of this book hopes that this will become a series and he hopes to write more books. So I'll be very happy to read the next installment whenever that's available. So I really enjoyed The Chestnut Man, and in the end I give it 4 stars. Also, I did watch the Netflix adaptation of The Chestnut Man, which is a mini-series, only 6 episodes. I watched it with my husband and we both flew through it. It definitely stays very true to the book with some minor changes here and there, but I really enjoyed watching it and I thought it was a great adaptation. So if you like The Chestnut Man, I definitely recommend watching the series, or vice versa. You can go either way, but it's definitely worth watching too. By the way, one more thing I do want to say about The Chestnut Man is that it definitely gets into some very difficult and tough themes. So I would recommend that you look into content warnings before reading this book, because there's definitely some content that's discussed in a certain amount of detail that if you're sensitive to it, you will probably want to avoid. So yeah, look at content warnings, or you can reach out to me and I can let you know what they are. So I hope you enjoyed this review video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. And to make sure you don't miss any more of my videos, please ring the bell to get all my notifications. I'll be publishing book review videos like this one at least once or twice every week, and in the coming weeks I'll also start putting out additional content that you won't want to miss. So thanks for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!